the dominant powers will depict Palestinians as demons, as other, as monstrous terrorists. And peace activists like myself might end up erring and depict them as saints and pure victims. And guess what? They're human beings, like all of us in this room. And why can't we just acknowledge and create a space where the essential human dignity of Palestinians is possible, where they have a stake in determining their own futures?
Good evening. It's great to see you all here. Thanks for coming out. I'm Suzanne Matson, a professor in the English department, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's presentation of the Lowell Humanities series. Philip Metras's appearance tonight, the fifth event of fall semester and part of a BC tradition stretching back to 1957, is co-sponsored by Poetry Days. Philip Metras is the author of 12 books, including Fugitive, Refuge, Shrapnel Maps, The Sound of Listening, Poetry as Refuge and Resistance, Sand Opera, and I Burned at the Feast, Selected Poems of Arseny Tarkovsky. His work, poetry, translation, essays, fiction, criticism, and scholarship, has garnered fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Lannan Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Ohio Arts Council, and the Watson Foundation. He is the recipient of the Adrienne Rich Award, 3 Arab American Book Awards, the Lyric Poetry Prize, a Pushcart Prize, and the Cleveland Arts Prize. Metras has been called one of the essential poets of our time, whose work is beautiful, powerful, magnetically original. He is a professor of English and director of the Peace, Justice, and Human Rights program at John Carroll University. Metras is a poet deeply engaged with issues of human suffering and injustice. But when another poet confessed to Metras once that he felt he should be writing more politically engaged poetry, meaning he, the other poet, Metras said, "I told him to write the poetry that he must, not what he felt he ought to do." Metras went on to ask, "Can't poetry just be beautiful and sufficient in itself, a refuge?" Metras's latest book of poetry, out last year, is titled Fugitive, Refuge, holding in tension the notion of flight and shelter, danger and haven. Humans fleeing to find safety has never been an abstract idea to Metras, but a legacy from his family's own migrations. He is the child of Lebanese refugees and immigrants on his father's side and a descendant of Irish famine migrants on his mother's side. "It's deeply personal for me," Metras has said in an interview, "the threads which vibrate into my earliest memories as a child and that which I don't remember but harbor in my body." In Fugitive Refuge, he draws on these threads to reconstruct family history in a formally experimental book embracing lyric, documentary, etymologies, footnotes, visual poetry, and through the capacious vessel of a 17th century Arabic verse form, the qasida, in which a hero journeys out from a point of loss or longing, encounters the difficult world, and tries to re-find home. In Fugitive Refuge, the hero of the qasida is the poet's great-grandfather, Iskander, a refugee out of Lebanon who was murdered in Mexico in 1923, after which his family fled north to the United States. But another seeker, the voice of the great-grandson poet, is Iskander's companion voyager. The book is laced with Arabic phrases, spaced with gaps of white space that bring moments of silence and unknowing, and bears rhetorical echoes of the Hebrew Bible and the prayer forms of the poet's Catholic upbringing. Language echoes, fractures, praises, praise, and is turned inside out, insufficient tool for all the mystery, pain, grace, and love the poet wants to hold and share. In the first half of the poem, "The Trees in My Chest," the poet writes, "Again the dream. I need to leave, yet each door I open opens another room, another door. The pen in open. Is this made possible by someone whose traces hover in absence? The scene in absence. I'm aching for you, dear architect. Philip Metris has said, it's beyond language, really. Is there anything that I can do in language that might just widen a space for human encounter, that might invite people into a metanoia, a transformation of the heart? Fugitive Refuge opens with a message to the reader before the table of contents, before the poems. It says, welcome. You're among family. The way is easy. Open. We return the greeting and the hand of kinship. Please help me welcome Philip Metris.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. I feel like I have to walk on water now after that introduction. Thank you so much to Sylvia and to Boston College and Allison for our conversation tomorrow. Just very grateful to be with you tonight. I see some old friends and classmates. Anybody here from Holy Cross? Let's hear your voice. At one point, we were all young, like some of you students. Then something happened. Inside every old person is a young person wondering what the hell went wrong. So I'm very grateful to be with you here tonight. So I'd like to begin with a poem that's going to be in Post Road, which is a journal out of Boston College. And this is a poem that's going to be published soon. It's dedicated to my friend Tomas Morin, who's this wonderful poet whose poems are funnier than mine. So I thought, well, okay, Tomas, here you go. Here's my Ask Your Doctor for Poetry. Do you suffer tingling or stabbing pain? Poetry may provide the relief you need. It works on nerves so you can think about something other than suffering. Side effects of poetry may include a drowsy numbness, wry mouth, blurry impressionism, swelling constellations, sudden hungers. Ask your muse about dilation, microcosm, enjambment breathing or trouble dreaming, mind hives or eye knives. Check the title before consuming poetry. If you're taking drugs, you may be more likely to misuse poetry. Talk with your muse if you plan to feather a lion or smother a father. If you miss a dose of poetry, down it as soon as you remember. You may smell strange smells. You may hear music that's only in your head. Your heart may swell. It may spread to unnamed parts of your body. It may become another country. One of the things that's so great about poems is that they're sort of everywhere in the language of, drug advertisements, and you just have to sort of look at the language askance and see what becomes of it. But this poem ended on a spot that I think is really a concern of my book, Fugitive Refuge, and a concern that I have about the world now, which is how do we come to belong, particularly in places where we might not find refuge or sanctuary or feel are hospitable to us. When I lived in Russia many years ago, a Russian poet said to me, "My homeland is Russian literature." And I thought that was so powerful because it helped me kind of reframe my understanding of what it means to belong at all. Now, obviously, I want you all to be good citizens and vote and exercise your democratic rights and everything. But I think what I found in literature always is a place where I felt like I could find home, find sanctuary, to figure out something about myself and maybe something about the world. So this book, I think, was inspired by a number of things that were happening in the mid-2010s. There was a huge mass global human migration crisis caused by a variety of wars, famines, and other impacts going on in the world. And I remember reading the news and sort of watching things unfold and feeling just absolute grief, turbulence, and anger, outrage about it. Why was it that people had to, decided to flee their countries of birth and, ended up dying in deserts or drowning in oceans because conditions were so awful? They thought that leaving the place that gave them identity and comfort was no longer sufficient and no longer safe. And it was only until I started reflecting and writing these poems that I recognized, as Suzanne mentioned, that that's also the story of my own family, the trauma of displacement and exile. And so the poems were an opportunity for me to be able to think through both things at the same time. What does it mean that the world seems so unsafe for people that they must flee? And also, how do we respond to those conditions of unsafety? And how do we create sanctuaries and refuges and places where people can feel safe and free? So not only on the page, but in the world. That's always the hope. So this is a strange little poem that's at the end of the book, but in many ways is a start of something. In Levantine Arabic, there's a phrase which is ahlan wa sahlan, which means basically welcome. But the poetry of the longer phrase means you've come upon people who are like family. And this place here for you is a place where you can rest. It's a smooth place. It's a level space, which is so much more beautiful than welcome, right? It's like your family, your home. That's what it means, welcome. And I wanted to write a poem that sort of reflected and meditated on creating a space of welcome in a book like this. In fact, I think the epigraph of the book is precisely that, right? Welcome, you are among family. I always wanted a book like that. I mean, poetry, as you know, is not something that you necessarily pick up off the shelf for an easy beach read, right? So I thought, like, let's have the opening at least be a welcome. So this poem is written in the Arabic form, which means this is an invented form in which you're really supposed to read each line from right to left rather than left to right. This is the poem, and I'll read it left to right and then right to left. So you'll get the disorientation of what it might look like on the page and then the clarity of semantic meaning. So, you have come upon people who are like family and this open space. No, cannot I cannot know. End will this how this will end. Both are we though we are both. Air different in breathing, breathing in different air. Flesh different of planets, planets of different flesh. Stop won't I won't stop. Hand my holding my hand. You toward you. Sahlan wa ahlan wa sahlan. People upon come have you. You have come upon people, family like are who are like family. Space open this open space. Space this open this space. You welcome I that I welcome you. Away turn to turn away. Stay to wish you unless you wish to stay. Shoes you remove and rest and remove your shoes. Speak your into lean we lean into your speak. Slake to drink tender drink to slake. Eat to fullness and fullness to eat. End thee are you are the end. Beginning my of my beginning, of beginning thee, the beginning of, end my end. That's a little trippy, isn't it? I know there's something about this, the opportunity of encounter. Hospitality is part of the Arab tradition, welcoming the stranger. And in fact, I would argue, and one of my classmates from high school, Tim Muldoon, is here. He can correct me if I'm wrong. I would argue that I think one of the ethical, traits of religion is does the tradition welcome the stranger? How does the tradition? And how can we enact welcoming the other? And if we can't do that, then what are we doing? So the cover of this book is from a wonderful artist who I guess just had a show here at the Institute of Contemporary Art, Chiharu Shiota, a Japanese artist. And this is one of her installations from a series that absolutely just gobsmacked me. You know, this is also Chiharu Shiota. I just found her work so evocative, beautiful, and strange. And I wanted my work to be in conversation with her work. The other thing is like, and for people my generation will understand this, but I always felt like a book cover is like your only chance to pretend you're like putting out an album. And so this is like album art, which says something about the work, right? The art is supposed to rhyme in some ways with the spirit or the content in some way. And, you know, this is a book really about thinking about global human migration, fugitivity, but also refuge. And this installation, I mean, it looks like a painting, but can you imagine a room full of descending red threads upon which are keys tied, and at the center of which is a boat which beats almost like a heart, you know? One of the things I did in this book is draw upon the archive of materials of the family migration story. And I just thought I would share this because and I know Cook has called me meters before. Here it is. It was actually, we were almost meters for a half second. This is the land border pass of my grandfather as he crossed the border of Laredo, Texas on October 1st, 1923. His name, Felipe, he obviously was growing up in Mexico. Someone had written in the initial draft, had typed meters, and then it was crossed out and someone hand wrote metris. And to me, it was such an interesting thing to see in the archive, is this insistence on a certain spelling against whatever the convention was. No, not meters. As it stands, actually, the last name is from my great-grandfather's first name, which was a patronymic, which was Mitri or Demetrius, and that's where the name came from. So there are very few of us metrises. If you ever meet another metris, we're related. There are like, you know, less than 100 of us, and there'll be none in 100 years probably. So then again, we won't be around in 100 years, so we won't mind. So anyway, I think there's certain poetry in the insistence of how you want your name to look and to be spelled, that shows, like, I don't know, the human struggling against bureaucracy. We see this every day, you know, in our own country and throughout the world. People struggling against the ways in which they are erased by governments, states, and you know, ideological forms of cruelty. So my grandfather, I knew him as an older man, but he was still very tough, and I could tell. My father tells me stories of how tough he was. Both my grandfather and his brothers and sister, maybe not his sister, but they witnessed the murder of my great-grandfather. He was killed in his shop in Salina Cruz in 1923. And that trauma is one that I think reverberated down through time. I think it had something to do with the hardness of masculinity that my grandfather carried in himself through the world, and that he translated to his own kids, including my dad. And so I became aware as I was working on this that this book was, and Suzanne, it's so cool having good readers of work, because like Skandar, my great-grandfather, is like the one who I wanted to talk to, the one who suffered that, but I also needed to talk to my grandfather, who's no longer around. Here goes. Poetry equals crying. I wanted to see if I could sort of bury some of those hungry ghosts by getting the story right. So this poem occurs 20-some years after that incident. My dad is a little boy going into a little shop in Brooklyn Heights where he was growing up. Sahadi's is still there. It's a Lebanese food store. And he saw someone, he thought it was his dad, but it wasn't. It was an uncle he had never met. How many people in this room have family members who aren't talking to each other? Yeah, look around. We all have family members who are struggling, And so my grandfather and his brother didn't talk for at least 20 years. I wondered if something of the trauma that they witnessed had something to do with that. So this is a poem kind of about what my dad experienced and trying to understand the legacy, the inheritance of traumatic violence and how that changes people, and if there's any way to see the person beneath the trauma. So it's called From Thy Face Shall I Be Hid, which is a King James shout out to the story of Cain and Abel, about two brothers who got along very well. The end. And no one killed anyone. Like a man fighting against his mirror, two brothers circled, fists aloft, no words. I couldn't tell my uncle from my father. Years before, how did they watch their father confront the gang alone? In his own blood, like a man crashing against a mirror and falling in. No forgiving the other what each himself had failed to stop. Why could I not tell I'd seen my uncle to my father? At Sahadi's, I thought he was my father, ahead in line. I'm Uncle Sam, he said. Like a man feuding against his mirror, he bought me 3 meat pies. My father gave me prunes and the belt. Uncle patted my head. No one knew why Uncle and my father refused to speak for years. Now I hold the picture, homing in, no space between their leaning heads. They aim for the heart. A man brawls his mirror. I can't tell my father from my father. This is one of my cherished pictures of my grandfather and his brother boxing on a roof in Brooklyn in 1929, I think. And no one threw anybody over the edge of the roof. There was something about their heads touching that demonstrated the kind of intimacy of this sparring that brothers do. My previous book is called Shrapnel Maps, and it concerns a longstanding attempt for me to try to write about the Palestine-Israel predicament. And one of the main reasons that I got interested in it at all was my sister spent a summer at Birzeit University in Ramallah learning Arabic in 1993. And she came back with all of these stories about life there and what the conditions that Palestinians faced. And like many of us at the time, I had no idea what was happening. And I thought she was maybe brainwashed. But what I came to learn is that, there was a lot that I didn't know, and I wanted to learn more. And over many years, and in fact, 10 years later, my sister ended up marrying a Palestinian guy. I went to Palestine and got to see Palestinian life up close. And after that experience, that joyful experience, around which was the mechanism of dispossession, erasure, and violence that those people lived with every day, there was this joy of this wedding that happened. And in fact, I'm going to deviate from my script here, which is no script, but and just to read a poem, because I know that some of the students here read the wedding poem called Concordance of Leaves, and I thought maybe I'd just read a couple sections about that. Just maybe two little poems. That's the thing, the dominant powers will depict Palestinians as demons, as other, as monstrous terrorists. And peace activists like myself might end up erring and depict them as saints and pure victims. And guess what? They're human beings, like all of us in this room. And why can't we just acknowledge and create a space where the essential human dignity of Palestinians is possible, where they have a stake in determining their own futures? So that was interesting, was to say, okay, like both of these things are existing at the same time. I can see the joyfulness of people here, the rootedness that they feel in their land, their sense of community, and also the trauma that is in some of the faces of the people there who have experienced unbelievable difficulty, torture even. My brother-in-law had a scar on his head, which was from a prison. And that is all too common. So these are just two little sections. One of the things that happened was many things. One cool thing is like there are two rappers at the wedding. They're called Ataba singers. They're simply there to pump up the families and to praise them. And they compete line after line in an improvisatory way. I wish I had recording of that doing it, because it's the most cool thing I'd ever seen in my life. And there were many dancers. And the night before, the women were drumming their tablas and singing and inviting my sister into the family. And it was just absolutely beautiful. So that simultaneity of experience. Okay, so this is one of the two sections that I'll read from Concordance of Leaves. Scarved sisters are radiant with wide mouths and waves and teeth and singing. And though there is the great unhappiness framed in silent, unsmiling faces hammered on insides of houses, watching over all preparations, night is lifting. The women are drumming the tabla, their voices inviting a heart to break itself and open a space another could nest inside. And this is the second poem from that. Isn't it weird that in English we only have one word, love, that's supposed to encapsulate everything from like enjoying mac and cheese to the deepest heartfelt love that you have for another person? I love mac and cheese. I love you. In Arabic, there are many words for love. So, who's the barbarian? I'm just kidding. Because there is a word for love in this tongue that entwines two people as one, and there is a word for love in this tongue that nests in the chambers of the heart, and a word for love in this tongue that wanders the earth, for love in this tongue in which you lose yourself in this tongue, and a word that carries sorrow within its vowels, and a word for love that exudes from your pores, and a word for love that shares its name with falling. This photo has a little story to it. This is an older man who's a refugee from a village called Izdud. And I have a friend who's a poet. Some of you may have heard of him, Fadi Judah. Fadi is an incredible poet and translator. And his email has Izdud in it. And I didn't know what Izdud was until I asked him. So part of being human being is like you never stop learning. That his village that his parents were expelled from in 1948. And for those of you who know Israel, that's near Ashdod, right? So Izdud, Ashdod, same name, really. He remembers that village in his email, and everyone has to address their messages to his village. So this refugee who had returned, and he's at a school, the remains of a school building is getting taken over by trees and brush. This is Izdud for Fadi Judah. The other thing about Fadi is that he's argumentative, and I love him for that. He doesn't suffer fools gladly, and I've been occasionally the object of his, reprobation, like, dude, know better. Okay, do better. Izdud. Dear descendant of the disappeared, you ascend the pillar of your own air, spin and span whole abysses with lines translating there to here and here to where wind winds in dry waddies. Hoist sea in handful after invisible handful. Is dude now your email address and digital image of branches through windows within school ruins? A refugee points with his cane to what he only can see. You argue against the argument against yourself you yourself make, and home in. Kiss my blind eyes clear, close keyholes with opening, homeland. You cradle in vowels what was not never yours. I'll hold it here till you return. I think once you meet a Palestinian person, you're obligated to hold a little bit of that dream of return. This poem is also related to this subject and also a self-admonition. I think what I'm going to teach you tonight is that it's okay to be wrong and then to recognize that you're wrong. And for those of you in relationships, you might also become an apology machine. Don't apologize for things that you don't need to be apologetic for, but apologize for the ways that you've done wrong. So in this case, I feel like after publishing Shrapnel Maps, I wanted to just contend with the fact that some of my friends, for example, Fatty said, thanks for your book. It's good, but it's not for me. And I had to contend with what that meant. And of course, what it meant is, a Palestinian needs to tell a Palestinian story. My story is not going to take his story. And but the level of pain that Palestinians have been enduring in recent times in particular is something that I wanted to try to attend to in this poem. So I met a guy named Mossab Abu Toha, who's a poet from Gaza, who in 2014 started an English language library called the Edward Said Library. He actually started this because, and this is a shout out to any English major in the room, he, after the bombings of 2014, Operation Cast Lead, he was going through the university's bombed library and he pulled out a Norton anthology of American literature. And he had an idea, like, what if I could make a library of English literature, English language literature, and that's what he did. So we had a number of conversations, particularly during COVID, and some of them are actually in this new book, Dispatches from the Land of Erasure. And but I just had the feeling that maybe there were times that I didn't listen hard enough, or my poems didn't capaciously include, or maybe they could never include the true suffering that he was enduring. So in 2020, I wrote this poem, and then in 2023, his house was bombed and destroyed in November. So in a way, this poem makes even more sense. It's the title's a shout out to W.B. Yeats. Any Yeats fans in the room? Woo woo! He has a poem called Remorse for Intemperate Speech. He got mad, like any normal person does from time to time. Anger is an appropriate human emotion. Sometimes it's just covering our feelings of grief or, whatever. But I think my problem sometimes is that I temper my truth because I want to get along. And I know that folks in the younger generation here probably feel that really strongly because you understand the hatefulness that exists in the world and you don't want to be in conflict. But let me tell you something right now. It's way better to have a reasonable conflict than it is to avoid conflict, because that means you're asserting your desire and need. And it doesn't mean that you have to get that thing, but that you need to be able to say what it is. I think for a variety of reasons, I've always avoided conflict because I didn't like the way it made me feel. And I think I've lost certain things in my life. So conflict is okay. Tension is okay. That's what makes a guitar string sing. The question is what we do with conflict. How do we respond to it? How do we find creative solutions to conflict? Anyway, that's a long aside. Here we go. Remorse for temperate speech. For I spoke as if I knew, to you who know how a house looks clothed in flames from the inside. You sitting in the smoke as if watching my prose only stoke the flames in that stagnant room among stagnant rooms where the powerful talk for your people bound in the margins of empire's book who speak and speak and speak and pretend to listen. May you find the wadi where water flows into future and greet what has come before, where you did not know you knew before, the unmapped hidden wadi where past and future meet. Okay, this is the 2-poem warning. This means if you're suffering out there, you're almost done. Your suffering is almost over. Let my people go. This is a poem about my daughter. Her name is Layla. And Layla is a beautiful Arabic word that means night, but it also means dark beauty. And now she's like a college student, but when I wrote this, she was just a little kid who needed her hair brushed by her dad, and I just didn't know what I was doing. So I learned some things. And yeah, it also references the fact that I've lost my hair, which is a tremendous ego blow, but what can you do? The good thing about poetry, as opposed to athletics, is like, you're cooked as an athlete by like 32. But with poetry, you sort of ripen, like you're like, I'm like cheese or wine, just like getting a little better as time goes on. Not my hairline, but, my poetic line, I guess. Okay, so for Layla means night, and night is beautiful to the desert mind. I was thinking, like, why would night be beautiful? Of course, if it's a super hot climate, then night is the time when you can do things. You can dance and, But the ends of the earth writhe in crazy fire. So I narrow my eyes to count each strand upon your sweet and tender head, replenished by their number. Midway in this thicket, a father now, my own skull bared by time's flames. Today I learned for the first time the inside of a girl's hair, to brush the hair beneath the hair. The generous scalp might give them up to brush. The brush might give them up to trash. But I will hoard their beautiful night. All right, now we get to drink. So this is a poem called "Raise Your Glass," and I don't think I have the text here because it's just going to be a surprise. What I'd like you to do is play along with me, and every time I say a toast, I'd like you to raise a fictional glass of whatever your beverage of choice is. So if I say a toast, you're going to say a toast. So a toast. All right, let's do one more time. A toast. All right, we're getting into it now. Okay. Raise your glass. A toast to the thirst that won't be quenched. A toast to the drought that dries up in the rain. A toast to the drunk who finally stops drinking and drinks loneliness again. A toast to the fire that guts the past and clears way for future. A toast to the country that misplaces its border guards. A toast to the borderland between our lives and the dream of our lives. A toast to the one who won the election for a country that no longer exists. A toast to the president who dreams he's lost his arms and wakes with an itchy scalp. A toast to the walls that grow doors overnight. A toast to the migrants, the authors of movement who write with their feet. A toast to beauty that has no reason but herself. A toast To the youth who don't know, history tells them it's not possible. A toast to us in the middle of the thicket, and the only way forward is farther in. A toast to the aged who live their last years where they've always lived, in another country. A toast to the dream of the other country that is and is not in this one. A toast to social media and its endless feeds where the phone eats first. A toast to the internet that helps us forget what we never knew we needed to know. A toast to the freedom where no one is free unless everyone is free. A toast to the last page of the internet which reads, "Go the fuck outside." A toast to the host and the guest, the ghost in this house, where we die together tonight and rise in some distant yesterday, our bodies hiding in the light of a forgotten open page. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Philip Petras, for this wonderful reading. We have some time for questions.
Thank you. You may have said this earlier, but what does wadi mean?
Wadi?
Wadi,
Oh, thank you for asking. I should have parsed it, but I didn't. A wadi is like a valley or a seasonal stream bed. Yeah, so I used it in back-to-back poems, didn't I? Where wind winds in dry wadis, and may you find the wadi where water flows. It's just a beautiful word that indicates a sort of a little space where, a valley perhaps. I mean, one of the cool things, if you've ever been to this land, the Holy Land, Israel, Palestine, whatever you want to call it, is that it's so full of kind of hills and valleys. If you've ever read the Bible, of course, you see it over and over, yeah. So I wanted a word there that would not be a word that you would instantly know unless you knew the word in Arabic, because I wanted it to be a little bit of a mystery, Actually, my friend Fadi says, and I think this is a little pessimistic, but he said, Palestine will not be free in English. Palestine will only be free in Arabic. I thought, wow. What he's basically saying is like, Palestinians can only determine their freedom, and we will never be able to do that. So I don't know if that has anything to do with that, but I just wanted a little mystery there, I guess. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank
Does that answer your question?
Totally.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
you.
Thanks, Phil. That's just gorgeous.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for sharing. So I confess that this is one of these cases of something's on my mind, but I heard it in what you were saying. So I'm going to just ask you or invite you to reflect. I was reflecting on Jeremiah with a class today, and specifically the literary form of lament.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know if you see what you're doing as a form of lament.
Yeah. Well, and just to pan back from lament, right? Jeremiah being a prophet, the prophetic mode's really interesting to me. There's that Walter Brueggemann book on the prophetic imagination, which is, I hope that there's something prophetic in the work. What does he say about the prophetic mode? He says this: it's not like telling the future, and it's not simply scolding people. It's calling people into returning to their hearts, basically, to love and to be more committed to God. So that's the prophetic mode. It's a calling in as much as it is a calling out, I guess. And part of recognizing as the prophetic mode is, I think I'm creating this little fireworks over here because I'm pressing on the chord. Part of the prophetic mode is recognizing that the world is broken and that we are broken as well. And so to grieve, engage in acts of public grief. I sort of feel like, if you asked the most angry people, on the internet why they're angry, if you could sort of invite them to explore, it's usually fear and sadness. And so, I don't think people have an adequate way of grief, about personal and collective loss. And I think what's so cool about, that mode in Jeremiah, the lamentation or the elegy, being the poetic version of that, it's an opportunity to model processing of grief in a way that, so we don't just like, as my friend Cook would say, so we just like press it down like a ball in the water and it'll never pop back up, As the Irish say, what do you do with, your sadness? You just push it down, push it down, push it down, and then someday you die. Does that answer your question? Awesome, cool.
Thank you for your talk and your poems. My question is very simple. I would like to know how your experience as translator helped or made your life as poet more difficult.
Thank you for that question. So I got involved in translation because some foolish foundation gave me money to study in Russia after I graduated from college. And I went to Russia because I was told that their poets were revered and tyrants feared them. And it turned out that in 1992, most Russians just wanted a good German toaster and the conveniences that one might have in a McDonald's and other sorts of things. So I was swiftly disabused of some sort of romantic idea of poetry. However, the opportunity to talk with poets from the Russian tradition and translate their work was life-changing to me. I would not be a writer if I did not have the opportunity to dwell inside the architectures of verse of these beautiful poets like Arseny Tarkovsky and Sergei Gandlyevsky and many others. Even, I translated Lermontov and Pushkin and folks like that. And actually, like, what happened was I went to this country, and for those of you who've traveled, usually in the first couple of weeks, you're in this, or at least I was, this state of ecstatic, joyful wonder. Like everything in the new country seems so incredible. But that quickly passes, and then you recognize that people are just people, and everything is hard. And there in 1992 in Russia, everything was very hard. And so I thought I could write my own poems there, but I was swiftly muted. I became mute because I did not know how to write about the chaos of that period and the suffering that people were enduring as they were trying to contend with the fact that a whole system was completely coming apart, and a new system was being born inside that system, but it was not fully apparent. And so the great joy I had just to like, okay, I can't solve anything. I can't write anything about this, except I can work on this 10-line poem, and I could try to figure out like how to translate, how to carry across some element of the beauty that's embedded both in sound and in syntax into English. Could I do that for today? Could I get these 10 lines right? And if I could get these 10 lines right, then maybe I had done something with my day. So in a time of, incapacity, of muteness, translation allowed me to feel like I was doing something for literature and help me understand the way poems are made and help me appreciate, particularly in the Russian tradition, also in the Arabic tradition, how much sound and music is essential to poetry. And I hope that that's infused in my own work in some way. And I know that translation is both impossible and absolutely necessary. It's a bridge for us to understand other cultures. So, does that answer your question? And where are you coming from?
Brazil.
Oh, Brazil. Cool. Do you translate?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Do you feel the same? Okay. Yeah, and anybody can do it, even if you don't know a language. Really is possible now with friends, and hopefully not too much AI. Please, please do not put us all out of business.
Hi. I'm a freshman at this place, and
awesome. This place.
This place.
Hogwarts, right?
Yeah, something like that. And I've been really struggling to find time to write poetry because my class and workload and literally everything else has not given me a moment to sit down and really feel anything, which is the college experience.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, as an adult with bills and a mortgage or rent and kids to feed and a bunch of other things to do throughout your day, how do you find time to write, and what do you think is the perfect time to really write anything?
Yeah. Well, I hear in you a great hunger to have space in your life to do it, right? You want to do it, but things feel like they're conspiring to get in the way, right? Yeah, totally. So part of the reason I chose to go into the professoriate is that, I was basically trading money for time. So I've never owned a new car, but I have my summers to write, and it's a trade that I made. That life was the life that I, wanted. For you as a student and just as a human being, life is hard, right? So just give yourself the gift, though, of that space, I'm guilty of this too, which is horrible to recognize, but real, half an hours later, real. And what have I done? I've gotten some serotonin hits. Maybe I've shared something with my friends, but what have I made? I think actually if we, turned our phones off and only had them on when we needed to communicate with someone, we would find some time. I'm afraid that we're all addicts to our devices. And I'm not saying that's the case for you, but I'm saying that's what I know I need to do. Also, think of it this way, think of it as is this too sinister? I don't know. Think of it as cheating on your normal responsibilities. I've got to grade 40 papers, but I really want to write this poem. I just write the poem. I'll stay up later. Because joy, it's joyful for me to do this. I feel so lucky that I could be in front of you, sharing my stories about my family and writing poems. It's the most joyful thing. So if it gives you joy, why are you not giving yourself that opportunity to have that joy? Even if it's just 5 minutes, I'm going to just write one image from the day that meant something to me, where I experienced beauty or wonder or something, one image. It's all you need. And you'll find if you do it every day, actually even just 5 minutes a day, you'll find more time for it. And it'll become a habit. It's you can't shoot a 3-pointer if you never pick up a basketball, I don't know. What's your sport? Do you like a sport? You can't, I don't know. I was going to go to another place. You can't punch somebody out if you don't start swinging. So whatever it is, whatever you need, right? Yeah, so practice. We're talking about practice. Yeah. I hope that helps at all. And also just be gentle with yourself, try to do a little. The other thing I do is I keep notebooks. Someday someone's going to read them and be horrified by my literary screaming in a pillow. But I find when I can't figure out how to get to a poem, I can at least write something down, some prose about my day, something that's going on. And actually, I was in college with a number of these lovely people, and there were times when I couldn't write anything, but I wrote down whatever I was obsessing over or sad about or excited about. And I'm so grateful that I have that writing, because there are things that I've forgotten that I now see. Oh my gosh, that happened and that was real. And this is the stuff that concerned me. And it was, these were signposts in my life. I mean, your life is a beautiful text every day that's unfolding. Some of it you're writing, and some of it's being written through you, and some of it you have no control over, but that's it. And that's what, I mean, shout out to St. Ignatius, right? The examine practice is every day, your life is this unfolding text that you can read and see the Spirit moving through it in some way. So I don't know. Hopefully, get a notebook, or use your notes app, or if you, oh, awesome, you got the notebook. All right, you're already there. Awesome. All right. So like during the reading, like if I'm reading a poem to you and you're not, and it inspires you, go to your poem. Don't worry about me. And I don't know if your other professors will feel similarly, but just keep nodding. Like, yeah. I'm grooving on my own poem. Okay.
Do you have a favorite poem, or are your poems like your children where you love them all equally, but maybe not the same on every day?
Thanks.
Or is it phases that you've gone through, and if so, why?
Probably not surprising. It's like whatever I'm working on. It doesn't mean it's the favorite, but it's like what my attention is concerned with. And I think, being a poet is like the most weird, awkward thing in the world. I mean, like, who cares about poetry? But I do, right? I care about it. And it's that joyful attention to the thing that is what's so life-giving for me. I think it is a form of prayer for me, actually, in some way. So whatever I'm working on, I'm inside of. And whatever I've given birth to is like out there in the world. And, I don't know. I try to read the poems that I think have a resonance or that keep hitting me, like that poem about my dad. And so I don't know if they're my favorite, but the ones that feel alive still. They still like connected to me in some way, and yet they're still communicable or experienceable by others. So those I have a tender spot for those, because I don't know why they keep calling emotion out in me, but they do. Thank you. Could I read you one last poem? All right. This is just like a what's it called? A last poem. And I'm just so grateful that you're all here. Dave Ferreira, I owe you 72 boxes of saltines for freshman year in college. Thank you, Dave. I still owe you all the saltines. How are the Celtics doing, by the way? Look at you. Beautiful. Dave and I and Brian, we all played on a basketball team called Death or Glory, which was a reference to a song by The Clash. It was ironic, as we were, but we had a lot of fun together. And now I'll be lucky just to like walk out of this room in one piece. So I'm hoping that you all carry your light within you, and to take care of yourself. And also recognize that we need each other, and we need to see the light in each other. So don't be afraid of it. This is after a Muslim prayer, but it also sounds like a Hebrew psalm to me, and also the prayer of St. Patrick. So there you go. 3 religions in one poem. Devotional. Light my face, and light the flesh of my flesh. Light each my eyes, and light inside my sight. Light the light that makes me light in the bones, and in my hands light, and in my loins light. And light your light before and behind me, above and beneath me. Light to my right and light to left. Light to my enemies, who in the moral dark will use my light against me. Light the dull swords of my ribs, the thick fist within. Light the blood-hot rooms pulsing there. Light the gates when they swing wide to the stranger. Light more light on my tongue. In the light, more light. In the black, light. And when it's time to snuff this wick, light that light. Thank you, everybody.